Good evening and welcome to this regular meeting of the Council of the Municipality of North Perth. Our meeting date is Monday, July 24th, 2023. I'm Mayor Todd Kasenberg and I'll call this meeting to order. I ask the clerk to note our starting time for the minutes as 7 p.m. Warm welcome is extended to councillors, staff, delegations, other participants who are intending to participate tonight, regardless of whether being physically in attendance in the chamber and Listowel or being connected through web technologies. We begin tonight's meeting with the playing of O Canada. Those in chambers, as able, are invited to stand. We acknowledge that we are on the traditional land of the Anishinaabe peoples. We wish to recognize the long history of Indigenous peoples in Canada and show our respect to them today. We recognize their stewardship of the land. May we all live with respect on this land and live in peace and friendship. Tonight's meeting is being streamed live on the Municipality of North Perth YouTube channel and will be available there after the meeting as an archived video. To those viewing the archive via the YouTube channel or even this as a live transmission, a warm welcome to you. To those present in the gallery today by attending a public meeting of the Council, you are consenting to your image, voice, and comments being recorded. Anyone who is invited to speak will be recorded and their voice, image, and comments will form part of the live stream. The chair and or the clerk have the discretion and authority at any time to direct the termination or interruption of live streaming. Such direction will only be given in exceptional circumstances when deemed relevant. Circumstances may include instances where the content of debate is considered misleading, defamatory, or potentially inappropriate to be published. Attendees are advised that they may be subject to legal action if their actions result in inappropriate and or unacceptable behavior and or comments. Thank you. This time I invite decorum over the course of the coming meeting. It's a pleasure to see all councillors in their seats. And in fact, the seats have been brought closer to me. Everyone has been compressed closer tonight. So we're back to an original configuration that I first witnessed 4.5 years ago as mayor. Let's move to item 2.1 of our agenda pertaining to pecuniary interest. For the benefit of those unfamiliar with our council practices, provincial legislation requires councillors with a potential pecuniary or financial interest in any item at the council table to declare this interest and to remove her or himself from discussions and voting on the item. In accordance with recommended protocol, at this time I invite all councillors with a perceived pecuniary interest, including those who have declared in writing already, to verbally advise the chair in public session and to submit documentation to this effect in writing to the clerk. Councillors are further reminded that should a potential conflict arise during the meeting, they may so declare and act at any point in the meeting. Colleagues, I don't think we had any pre-notifications around pecuniary interest. Any of you wishing to make a declaration at this time? Not seeing any indication of that, so let's move on to the gentle logistics of the meeting. All participants are invited to speak when called upon by yours truly, serving as chair. Those participating remotely who wish to speak may draw the attention of the clerk through our conferencing technology's text chat function. Remote participants are generally asked to maintain a mute state in the web conference until I recognize the right to the floor. If, when I do so, recognize I don't hear you because you are muted or having some technical difficulty, I will advise and try to send help. Let us now focus on the people's business. I invite those in the chamber to silence and put away their phones. I further invite decorum. Regarding item 2.2 of our agenda, I have a motion before me for the adoption of the agenda for tonight's meeting that reads as follows, that the agenda for tonight's meeting be approved. Can I call for mover? Councillor Andreessen, thank you, and Councillor Blazek will be our seconder. Any discussion or debate on this item? Seeing none, let's have that vote. And that is carried. The first vote of the night is always the one where we're just waiting to see if it's going to all work. All right, let's move forward then to item 3 on our agenda, the so-called consent agenda. Consent items are placed on our agenda because they are believed to be non-contentious, yet they may warrant council's recognition and or action. Grouping them expedites our business. However, any councillor wishing to extract an item from the consent agenda for discussion, debate, and individual action may do so. There are 19 items on our consent agenda tonight, including the minutes of our last regular council meeting. Councillors, anything here to extract or any corrections to make to the minutes? Okay, I'm not seeing anything, so I do have a resolution related to the consent agenda as follows, that consent items 3.1 to 3.19 be received for information, and the minutes of the July 10th, 2023 regular council meeting be adopted. Can I call for a mover on this one? Councillor Rothwell, thank you, and Councillor Nordholm will be our seconder. Any discussion or debate on that item? Seeing none, let's have that vote. And that is carried. Thank you. Let's move forward then to item 4 on our agenda. Per the agenda, we have planned to hold 3 public meetings to address a drain report from the engineer and 2 zoning bylaw amendments that are proposed. To that end, we must adjourn from our regular council meeting, and I have a resolution that allows us to do that. As follows, that the Council of the Municipality of North Perth adjourns at 7:08 p.m. for the purpose of public meetings under the Drainage Act and Planning Act concerning the following. A public meeting to consider the Bartman Municipal Drain, application for zoning bylaw amendment 08-2023 by Laverne and Marie Gingrich, and application for zoning bylaw amendment 21-2022 by Faye and Tyrone Cross, TPIC Holdings, Inc., and Kim Jones. Can I call for a mover on this one? Councillor Anstad, thank you, and Councillor Richardson will be our seconder. Any discussion or debate on this one? Seeing none, let's have that vote. Did we get a loss of service there? Okay, and I think we have 10 accumulated votes, so that is carried. Thank you. That means we are temporarily recessed from council, and we will move now first to the drain. Yes.
Mr. Mayor, sorry to interrupt. We're just having trouble connecting with Brandon from Street Associates for the drain, so I might have to have that one last.
Okay, so I'm being given advice to push the drain to the third item that we address, and we will then move to the public meetings for zoning bylaw meetings. So let's go with the first one that we have here. As follows, welcome to a public meeting dealing with applications made under the Planning Act. This is for a proposed amendment to the North Perth zoning bylaw. This is a statutory public meeting to deal with an application for a zoning bylaw amendment 08-2023 by Laverne and Marie Gingrich, affecting property described as concession 2, N part lot 1 and part lot 2, 5023 line 87, Wallace Ward, Municipality of North Perth. Correspondence, reports, and comments received regarding this application will be considered by council. Those in attendance remotely wishing to make comments concerning this application will be given the opportunity to do so. Anyone wishing to appeal council's decision in this matter must make verbal submissions during this public meeting or have made a written submission to council. Those wishing to receive notice of the decision regarding this application must notify the clerk via email or telephone, giving their mailing address and telephone number. This time I'm going to call for a summary of the application. This will be offered by Jerica Gilbert, planner for the County of Perth. Welcome, Planner Gilbert. Let me just get the microphone and the camera.
Yes, thank you, Mayor and Council. It's always a pleasure to be here. So this is, again, Zoning Bylaw Amendment 8-2023. The landowners are Laverne and Marie Gingrich, and they are being represented by K-Smart Associates Limited. The subject lands in question are near the boundary of North Perth and the County of Wellington. It's just right to the east of Listowel, where the star is there. And the change that is being considered tonight is rezoning a small portion of the property for a parochial school, which is a private school associated with a religious organization. The official plan designation on the lot is agriculture, and a small portion is natural resource / environment, and that is also reflected in the North Perth zoning bylaw. So normally institutional uses we try to direct to our settlement areas, but our plans and policies in Ontario recognize that there are certain communities that are reliant on horse-drawn transportation, and as such there are policies laid out where an institutional use like a church, school, or cemetery can be considered in an agricultural area so long as it meets certain criteria. So under the PPS, that would be section 2.3.6.1b. And basically there's 4 questions that we look at: whether or not it's in a specialty crop area, which this land is not; whether it complies with the minimum distance separation formula, so that separation between livestock facilities. This proposal will, as you'll see the netting in the image on the left, a small portion of the property will hit MDS, but there is no building being considered there. There's an identified need within the planning horizon, and the planning justification report submitted by the applicants details how the number of students will be increasing over the years. And alternative locations have been evaluated, and I believe this was the third location out of 3. And they have provided justification on where these students are living and traveling from on why this site was chosen. Under the official plan, we have section 5.5.11, which is very similar to the PPS. There's 2 additional criteria: that the land used for the school not go over 1.5 acres, which is the case here, and land leases are to be encouraged. And this land will not be proposed to be severed. It will remain with the Gingrich family, and assuming at some point in time when the school is no longer needed, it will revert back to agricultural lands, whenever that may be. And as part of the condition to have a school use in this area, there will be a zoning bylaw amendment, which is the process we're in right now. And then assuming the zoning bylaw amendment is passed, there will be site plan approval, since this is an institutional use. So one consideration that planning is working with public works staff, line 87 is a busy roadway. The applicants have provided justification on why their community feels that this is okay. They want more eyes on the street on the children as they move to school. That being said, in order to ensure the safety of those commuting to school, it may be the case that the municipality would like to look into certain upgrades in this area. And something that has also been flagged that this might be a potential route for the Listowel truck bypass. And it could be the case that having a school within the truck bypass might affect the success of that truck bypass being used. So there are a few considerations that we still need to kind of work out the details, but I'm happy to receive any questions or feedback, and thank you for letting me present this proposal.
All right. Thank you, Jerica. Don't go away yet. Just want to check in with regards to the provision of notice of this meeting. Can you give us the details around notice?
Oh, yes. So notice of application, do you happen to have that on hand, Lindsay? Yes. But it was by public notice sign installed on the property, as well as a mailing notice out 120 meters. And that should have been 20 days before this public meeting tonight.
Yes, so Mr. Mayor, the notice was mailed out and the sign was posted both on July 4th.
Okay. And can I ask for any comments that have been received from entities about this application? First, perhaps Planner Gilbert.
Yes, thank you. So agencies that were circulated were the County of Wellington, who have not commented as of yet, and the Grand River Conservation Authority. And the Grand River Conservation Authority noted the natural features on the property and have stated that they have no objections to the proposal of institutional use on plants.
Okay. No other correspondence received by your office. Thank you. Let me turn to our clerk. Have we received any correspondence about this application?
To you, Mr. Mayor, I have not received anything.
Okay, thank you. All right, then that allows us to move forward with our usual public meeting process. At this time, there's the opportunity for those who are in favor, other than the applicant, to speak to this application. To our knowledge, Clerk Klein, have any registered for that purpose?
No, the only person I'm aware of is the agent for the application.
Okay, thank you. Let me just make a public call then. Anyone in the audience wishing to speak in favor of this application besides the applicant? All right, seeing none, are there any in the audience who wish to speak as opposed to this application? All right, I'm not seeing any hands or twitches. Let's move on to the applicant or agent. Does the applicant or agent wish to avail themselves of the opportunities to present to council? Please, just identify yourself if you will.
Thank you, Your Worship, members of council. My name is Steve Jefferson. I'm a planner with K-Smart Associates Limited in Kitchener.
Oh, we need to turn your microphone on. Sorry about that. Okay. Try again.
There we go. Thank you. Yes. Thank you. My name is Steve Jefferson. I'm a planner with K-Smart Associates Limited in Kitchener, and we have worked with the site committee for the Wallacewood Parochial School for just over a year now. And we've been working on the land use planning side of the details, and we've also conferred with our civil engineering co-workers at K-Smart for some of the site development factors as well. This project has gone back just over a year for our office. We were contacted by this site committee. The members of that committee are in attendance this evening, and that also includes the landowner, Mr. Gingrich. So they are here to observe the proceedings. Originally, a site was selected on the north side of this road, just a bit to the west, and it seemed to be a fairly ideal location. It was at the front of a property with bush back in behind. It wasn't, part of a larger agricultural field. So we did make the request for pre-consultation review that was held with staff and agencies last June. And the GRCA did flag that the wetland existed in the woodlot to the north of that preferred site. So our clients did retain an ecologist and did a site-specific evaluation. Site meetings were held with the GRCA, and it was determined that the setbacks from that wetland pocket were going to make that preferred choice not acceptable for the school. So the committee went back and looked at two other sites. One was to the west on line 87, and this site that we're also considering this evening. Sorry, the previous one was on Road 146, which was just to the west, one of the north-south roads. And then this one as well at Mr. Gingrich's property. So the question of traffic-related issues was raised over a year ago, and so we've had a number of talks with our clients about the pros and cons of the different locations. Within our planning report, there is a figure showing the location of all the current families whose children would be attending this school, and this site is pretty well in the center of all of those farm locations. A number of the sites are either on line 86 or the county road, and so of the three roads where most of the people live, this is maybe the lower standard road in terms of provincial or a county road. However, it is recognized, again, that it is used not only potentially in the future as a truck bypass. Many current residents, either locally or traveling through, do use this road as a way to avoid line 86. So in our talks with our clients, the option around the corner is a less busy road. However, their preference was to actually have the school on a road that does have more traffic, so there are more eyes on the children to help keep an eye when they're traveling to and from school. There has been some talk about potentially upgrading this road. There are very narrow shoulders at the present time, and we've also included in our report a sample picture of the types of signage that's used in other rural schools like this, so that there is reduced speed limit with flashing lights during the school time, so that drivers in the area are aware that there will be students traveling by foot or by bicycle going to and from school. I did speak with Lyndon Couch again this evening, again before the meeting, and we agreed that we do need to have another meeting shortly after this time tonight to be able to see what his thoughts are on the pros and cons of this location, and we will continue to have that discussion with township staff. The site itself, in terms of its location on the Gingrich property, didn't show up on some of the one site plan, but to the south of the 1.5 acre parcel, there is a municipal drain crossing through. So in terms of farm equipment and cropping the lands, this is an area of the farm that was actually difficult already to get the equipment in. So there it does lend itself to be, for agricultural land, it's maybe a more preferred site. Obviously, we would like to have less than prime agricultural land for a use like this. However, Perth County being what it is, it's very difficult to find land that is not class 1 or 2 with the quality that you have here. So in terms of this site here, there is some lower quality soils adjacent to the drain, and we do want to keep the school building itself as close to the road as possible on the higher land. As you get further to the south, closer to the drain, it does get a bit wetter soils. So that's why we've shown the building location where it is. As also noted, the MDS calculation was done, so we feel confident that the work done demonstrated an area of non-buildable on a corner of the property, but there is adequate space for construction of the school on this property. We are prepared to move forward with the formal site plan application when a decision is made on the zoning. We do understand that you will be thinking about this and coming back at a future date to make a decision on the zoning, but my clients are prepared to keep moving ahead. The kids aren't getting any younger, and they would like to get the school built as soon as possible. So if you have any questions, I can take those now from council.
Great, thank you very much. All right, colleagues, it's over to us now. It's our turn to ask questions or make first comments about this. Anyone wishing to avail themselves of that opportunity? Councillor Rothman, let me get your microphone here. Okay.
Thank you very much, Mayor Todd, and good evening, Council. Thank you for the report, Jerica, and thank you, Steve, for you and Zaid's report. I note on page 77 of our agenda package, I think it's your first attachment here, showing the location of some of the students that would be attending the school. And in particular, I note on Perth Line 86, there's, I think, 7 locations. Having lived on Perth Line 86 for over 15 years, I can tell you, of all the roads, that's the busiest of them all. Certainly for those that may not be aware of this, further to the east, there is a parochial school on the north side of the road in Wellington County. And frankly, I am concerned that that would be a terrible location for any proposed new school. So I thank the selection committee that through your process, Perth Line 86 was not chosen as the preferred alternative. Having said that, obviously these children have to walk on a fairly, the busiest road in the county to get to another county road 9 in Wellington, or Perth Road 140 to get to the proposed site. That being said, I think given the fact that of all of the 3 alternatives, I think that the site that is being proposed can be made suitable, and hopefully the site selection committee have, given the fact that they're satisfied with that and members of the public haven't expressed specific concern, I'm certainly hopeful North Perth staff can work with yourself and the site committee and look at any possible improvements for safety of children coming to and from that school. Just a background note, Mayor and Council. So I was worked for the County of Perth when we had our first ever county official plan adopted in 1997. This policy that is currently in place in the county official plan basically mirrors what was approved through a mediation settlement with the Amish and Mennonite community, which expressed the concern with the provincial policy at that time and the proposed county official plan policy, which didn't allow any new institutional uses. And this was the first in all of Ontario that this policy came forward, and it did find its way in provincial policy. So I think it's clear that the province has seen it important to have parochial schools, churches, and cemeteries for those that rely on horse-drawn transportation in our community. And on that basis, I'm certainly in support of the proposal. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Andreessen.
Thank you, through you, Mayor Kaysenberg. I just want to first say that I'm not opposed to the location of the school at all. I think it's, a good spot for sure. However, I wouldn't mind if Jerica could bring up one more photo of that cornfield up, if you don't mind. You had it on your set of slides right there. Thank you. Thank you, Lindsay. The reason why I'm pointing this out is I want to draw everyone's attention to the width of this highway. And I agree with the fact that the positioning of the school in line 86 is difficult because of the busyness of that road. But the difference between line 86 and this road is an actual shoulder. There is no shoulder on this road, and I live off this road. I wouldn't even let my kids walk down it, and I would never walk down this road myself as an adult. So I'm not opposed to the school. I'm just so concerned about the safety of the kids traveling to school, even in buggies, because of it's just so narrow. There's also elevation on this road where there are slight hills coming in. Which concerns me because sightlines are more difficult. And this road's heavily used by farm equipment. And as it is, it's too narrow for some of our farm equipment. We can't pull over. And you can see there that there's no way that you can pull over, move aside for our farm equipment. And if kids are walking that space, it's even more concerning. I'm also concerned about even plowing, our snow plows out there. Our snow plows are plowing the road and they can't, there's nowhere to go because of the narrowness of this. So I do appreciate the fact that we're going to be speaking to Lyndon Couch, our manager of, I believe it's operations, around what can be done because I want the school to be located here, but I'm just so concerned that the actual ability to travel on foot or by bike, it would be very difficult in terms of safety. And I do understand that, we can reduce the speed limit, but typically it's at a little window of space in front of that school. We have a whole road that accesses from 140 to 146 where vehicles can be traveling 80 and kids are going to be on that road. So, it really begs the question, what can be done to really make this road more safe so that kids can access it to get to school? Thanks.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Andreessen. Do you have any read on how many children might actually use active transportation methods such as walking or biking to this school? Can you refresh us on that?
We did have the forecast of the number of students, and I don't see it right away. Essentially, all of the students would be traveling by foot. There's maybe a couple of the families that do have access to a vehicle, but whether widening of the shoulders is something that could be undertaken, even with the existing condition of the road and the amount of traffic. I would like to speak with Mr. Couch on any potential plans to widen those shoulders anyways. I may use this as a chance to put my plug in on the bypass study that I would prefer line 84 be used for the truck bypass as opposed to this road. However, that being said, I also recognize if that other road were chosen, people do use this already. We recognize that it is an alternative that many people do use.
Okay, thank you. I think our upcoming presentation of Transportation Master Plan and the data set that goes with that may give us a little bit more insight into volumes on that street, which could be helpful. All right. Questions, Councillor Nurnham?
Thanks to you, Mayor Kiesenberg. I'm just looking at our MDS circles here on page 11 of the first attachment. So that the MDS is for the dairy or for the barns there. Is the MDS different for the school? Does the school make for a circle around a school? Does it make it a lot more larger?
Through you, Mayor Kiesenberg. Yes, the MDS calculations were completed by Mr. Cleon Martin, and there is I believe it's a 2.0 factor for institutional uses such as this. So he's a recognized nutrient management and MDS expert, and so we reviewed his material and we're confident that he did apply the proper factors.
Yeah, that's fine.
Hold on, Councillor Johnston.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Steve, question about horse-drawn traffic. Will there be need to be an area built for horses to stay through the day if the children are bringing ponies or horses to school?
Through you, Mayor Kiesenberg. We do have that as one of the options in the site plan. Generally, we've shown the area north of the school as the gravel parking area. From our call it our research, but just from my driving around Perth County roads the last number of decades, it's quite common for schools like this to also have a hitching post that horses could stay there.
I agree with Councillor Andreessen's concerns, but I think it's also on our radar that no matter whether there's a school here or anything, we know that that road is too narrow. I can tell you if you meet a car with a tractor or a combine or anything like that, it's not passable, whether there's a buggy or a car. So we know it's on our radar that that road needs attention.
Okay, anyone else wanting to weigh in at this point? I thought I saw a little hand raised from Planner Gilbert here. Planner Gilbert, which number do you have?
14B.
All right, go.
Yes, just wanted to provide 2 quick notes on the questions that have been asked. So the max number of students would be 40. That would be the maximum capacity of the school. And in regards to MDS, so normally schools as institutional uses throw a wider MDS circle, but in the MDS guidelines, schools for communities relying on horse-drawn applications actually take the smaller MDS circle. So they are considered part B land uses instead of A land uses like a settlement area would have. Just wanted to contribute that.
Thank you, quite helpful. Anyone else with questions or comments about this application? Okay, I'm not seeing any indication of that. So the statutory declaration notice of the decision of council will be given in accordance with the provisions of the Planning Act. Council's decision is subject to appeal to the Ontario Land Tribunal in accordance with the provisions of the Planning Act. And with that, we can adjourn this meeting. All right, next up, we're going to do the other planning application. I think, Clerk Klein, just to check in, are we having any progress with getting Mr. Widener with us? Okay, so let's deal with the planning one first, and then we'll go to Mr. Widener. All right, so another Planning Act meeting. Welcome to those who are attending for the purpose of a planning meeting. This is a statutory public meeting to deal with an application for zoning bylaw amendment number ZBA 21-2022 by Faye and Tyrone Cross, TPIC Holdings Inc., Kim Jones, affecting property described as South Park Lots 7 and 8, Plan 152, and as Main Street, Listowel Ward, Municipality of North Perth, 555 Main Street West, I think it is, isn't it? Correspondence, reports, and comments received regarding this application will be considered by council. Those in attendance remotely wishing to make comments concerning this application will be given the opportunity to do so. Anyone wishing to appeal council's decision in this matter must make verbal submissions during this public meeting or have made a written submission to council. Those wishing to receive notice of the decision regarding this application must notify the clerk via email or telephone, giving their mailing address and telephone number. And this time I'm going to call for a summary of this application, and this will be offered by Mr. John Bice, planner for the County of Perth. Mr. Bice, welcome.
Thank you, Mayor Kaysenberg and council and members of the public too. So this zoning bylaw amendment was brought forth a couple weeks ago actually as a separate application. The applicants have since revised their planning justification report and have submitted a brand new application. Well, not a brand new application, but a brand new essentially justification for this proposal. The location of the property is 555 Main Street West, and it's just north of Main Street. It's fairly sandwiched between the downtown and Highway 23 to the west there. So the proposal currently in front of you is to renovate the inside of a dwelling to allow for 6 dwelling units and to renovate what is currently the detached garage to allow for 2 dwelling units. In total, 8 dwelling units are proposed. The units would range in size from 48 meters squared to 98 meters squared, and the entire proposal would be considered as cluster housing dwellings, and I'll get into that definition in a minute. So the application is to change the residential 4 R4 zone on the property to a residential 5 special or site specific to permit the cluster dwellings, as the current R4 zoning does not include cluster housing dwellings as a permitted use. So the site specific requests, the reason for the R5 special zone is outlined 1 to 5 on the slide, and I can go into that in any detail, and I think I will push that to near the end of this application as well. Okay, so section 1.1.1 of the PPS states that healthy, livable, and safe communities are sustained by promoting efficient development and land use patterns and accommodating an appropriate range and mix of residential types. That one is important to note for this application, as it is proposing some creative new mixed residential types that aren't commonly seen in the North Perth community. So the proposed conversion of the dwelling to cluster housing dwellings will support this efficient development pattern and provide for added sizing of residential types in the listable community. The proposal does conform with the 2020 PPS. So one thing to note that I just wanted to state when we're looking at the affordability in the listable ward official plan, essentially what us planners have been discussing lately is section 55.1, subsection F of the listable ward official plan when it comes to affordability. So in general, housing affordability and attainability are important topics within North Perth that are promoted within the context of planning. We want to see affordability and we want to see attainability. The listable ward 551 states that a minimum of 20% of all housing units to be provided within the listable ward will be within the affordability range established for this area by the province. So this policy is essentially a standard, and it's found in many OPs in the area, and I've included similar sections in Wellington and Huron County's OPs to kind of drill home the fact that it's more of a policy that applies to the wide range of the municipality rather than the site specifics of specific proposals. So it does not, essentially, this policy does not give the planning department the ability to require that a specific number of units in a proposal be affordable. This policy is high level and applies on a listable ward wide level. It does not allow us to get 20% on a site specific property. We can request affordable housing, however, we cannot require it. So stronger language regarding specific proposals and affordable housing would be needed in order for us to go out and require it. The paragraph about affordable and attainable housing in my report that you've all read is meant to provide more of a context to developments within North Perth. It's essentially to give council and members of the public an indication on what affordability looks like in North Perth and in Listowel. So comments have been received from the municipality's engineers, BM Ross, and they have indicated that the updated functional servicing brief that was done by MTE and the servicing sketch that was included in your council packages adequately address servicing. Residential density is also a strong policy requirement in the Listowel Ward Official Plan, Section 553 specifically. So the subject lands are approximately 0.28 hectares, about a third of a hectare in size. And the proposal is for 8 units. This produces a density of approximately 28.7 units per hectare. And this density of the proposal is slightly under the guidelines for converted dwellings and townhouse dwellings because the Listowel Ward Official Plan does not provide specific density targets for cluster housing. So townhouses and converted dwellings were used as a kind of a benchmark at this point because the proposal, we couldn't look at the cluster dwelling unit per hectare. So considering the mixture of low to high density residential density in the surrounding neighborhood, the slightly reduced density is considered appropriate. Another thing to consider is a residential development pattern. Section 554 of the list of award OP directs that where opportunities exist, council will favor residential intensification and redevelopment over new green land residential development as a means of providing affordable and efficient infrastructure and public service facilities. The proposal is considered an intensification proposal, and it satisfies this requirement of 554. North Perth zoning bylaw. Here we go into the definition of cluster housing, and hence the reason why this application has been brought forward to you. So essentially, the definition in the North Perth zoning bylaw is before you on the slide. It's essentially a group or groups of dwelling units which may be in various forms and so located on a lot that each dwelling unit may not have legal frontage on a public street or road, and more than one dwelling unit may exist on one lot. This definition is fairly vague and could include a wide variety of proposals. So if council were to consider some sort of housekeeping amendment to change this in the future, that can be discussed at a later date. So the property is zoned residential 4, R4 in the North Perth zoning bylaw. The R4 zone does not permit this cluster dwelling. However, the R5 zone does, and the proposal is to change to the R5 special. The proposal is to use the existing dwelling and detached garage as cluster housing. Although the proposal is also in keeping with the converted dwelling definition, the planning department is assessing the proposal as applied for as cluster housing. The planning department accepts GSP Group's planning justification that the proposal meets this definition of cluster housing. So there's also a wide variety of site specifics that is being applied for here. Essentially, the majority of these site specifics is to accommodate what is existing today. The minimum front yard setback of 4.4 rather than 6 meters required is essentially because the dwelling that you see in this picture is located 4.4 meters from the front lot line. The minimum side yard setback of 2.4, where 4.5 is required, is to accommodate the existing detached garage, which is existing. Same with the minimum rear yard setback, that's to accommodate the garage, the detached garage that will be used as cluster dwelling. The building height, again, the dwelling that you see in this image is over the 10.5 meter requirement. The only item that is being proposed site-specific that is not existing on the site today is to cap the maximum of 8 dwelling units on the site of the proposed development. And this is to accommodate neighborhood intensification and neighbor comments that were made. Okay, so the North Perth zoning bylaw the planning department did recommend one modification. It's essentially due to the nature of the development as both meeting the definitions of cluster dwelling and converted dwelling. In the North Perth zoning bylaw, there are some protections afforded to converted dwellings that aren't exactly passed to cluster dwellings. And this addition, this modification, is proposing to essentially include those protections. As we see, this is a creative kind of unique scenario where 2 definitions fit the mold here. So the department is including the modification that any addition that is erected must be constructed so too as to fit in with the character and design of the existing cluster dwelling. And this is essentially pulled from the converted dwelling sections or parameters of the zoning bylaw. So notice of public meeting was given according to Planning Act requirements on July 4th, and comments of opposition have been received by 2 members of the public, one being Douglas Pratt and the other being a letter from Darren Bessie and Heather Brewer. Staff are very accommodating and supportive of the public meeting, and we appreciate the comments that have been sent in. However, we do recommend approval at this time. I can take any questions. I believe that the applicant's planner may wish to speak at this point as well. But really quickly, just go over a few last images of the site to give a little bit more context, and I'd be happy to answer questions. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. You've indicated that there's been feedback. Perhaps we should entertain either a summary or reading those into the record, the feedback that's been received from constituents.
Mr. Mayor,
They were included as part of the agenda package, so they're available online.
Okay, that's fair.
So, yeah.
Okay, as long as we have them well documented. Have you received any separate comments or information?
No, Mr. Mayor, I've only received the comments from Douglas Pratt and Heather Brewer and Darren Bessie.
Okay, thank you. And nothing from other agencies that bear on this?
Through you, Mayor Kasenberg, the MVCA has indicated that there's source water protection on the property, and they have no objections.
Okay, very good. All right, so this brings us to the point in the meeting where the public can certainly interact with us. So at this time, I'll call for any who are in favor, other than the applicant, to share comments. Are there any in the audience today who wish to do so, or have we been apprised of any who wish to speak? Okay, thank you. Next, then, we call for those who are opposed. If there are any in the audience who wish to take advantage of the opportunity to speak in opposition to this application, the opportunity is now. Okay. Next, then, the applicant or the applicant's agent may present at this point, if so desired. If you'll just introduce yourself to us, we appreciate that.
There we go. Good evening, Mayor Kiesenberg and members of council. My name is Kristen Barrisdale from GSP Group in Kitchener. We are the agents acting on or working with Faye and Tyrone Cross on the property, as well as Turner Properties Investor Corp, or TPIC, has been noted on the application. Both Kim Jones from TPIC and Faye and Tyrone Cross are here today as well to answer any questions that you may have with regards to the existing structures on the site or their proposed intended use. Sorry. So I will just give you I'll keep my presentation brief. Mr. Bice has touched on a number of things that we have noted in our presentation, as well as the justification report that was submitted in support of the application. The slide that you see on the screen right now, the property is highlighted in red. It's a bit more broader aerial photo of the property and surrounding context. It's about 400 meters east of the commercial business core. It's surrounded by community uses, parks, trails, and churches. Undoubtedly, it's predominantly surrounded by traditional low-rise uses. However, there are some multiple dwellings or non-single detached dwellings that are proximate to the site. Again, Mr. Bice provided an overview or photos of the proposed site. What you see on the top two is the existing structure, a former single detached house, and more recently a bed and breakfast from the street. The bottom left-hand corner is an image of the detached garage that's also proposed to be converted to residential uses. What you see on the slide right now is a development concept, two-dimensional, that was submitted in support of the application. And it identifies the existing single detached dwelling, which is the larger structure closer to Main Street, and then identifies the detached garage at the rear of the site. It does provide further dimensions, the setback requirements or setbacks existing that have been incorporated into the zoning bylaw, as well as identifies some of the areas, a setback between the existing pool on the site, some of the open space space at the rear of the property. The proposed site plan that you see here in front of you also recognizes or provides for a demonstration of the existing parking facility on site. So right now there are 2 small parking lots associated with the existing building. One is on the left-hand side of the screen that you see, that's essentially the old driveway providing access to the former single or detached garage. And then there also is an existing surface parking facility located on the right hand of the site as well. Throughout the consideration of the proposed application, MTE consultants had provided some information to the municipality in terms of existing servicing connections to the site. It was noted that the existing water service connection on the site may or may not be suitable to accommodate the proposed intensification on the site. So the proposed development does include a new water service connection. The water service connection is what you see in blue. You can see it coming into the site and then teeing off to provide water services to the existing house, which will become converted, as well as the detached garage. And then the connections that you see in red are the existing sanitary connections, again providing the existing connection to the existing house and then providing for a future connection to the detached garage. Just a quick summary of the proposed zoning bylaw amendment. I won't go over these again because Mr. Bice has done a great job of indicating a justification as to why these have all been proposed. As he touched on, they're all reflective of the existing structures on the site. The proposed development does not include any significant exterior alterations, additions, or anything like that. Future development of the site is all internal. There will be some work that will be done demising walls, doorways, etc. As part of the application, previously in front of you, as well as this evening, we were provided copies of comments received from the public, noting their comments and concerns, and I'm just going to briefly take a moment to touch through or walk through some of these. I've highlighted them, kind of surmised them in sections or in groupings. So first and foremost, there was concerns expressed with regards to the proposed parking facilities on site. As I touched on, the parking that's proposed is reflective of existing parking. So while there may be some rounding out or some new gravel that may be putting down, but we're not actually taking away or enlarging those parking spaces significantly. We're not removing open space to accommodate parking. Secondly, there were some comments with regards to noise and potential noise impacts. The property will be continued to be used for residential purposes with some outdoor amenity space. However, the site is quite significantly sized by comparison to surrounding properties, which lends itself well to providing for separation between surrounding uses, as well as an ample amount of outdoor space for future residents. Comment number 3, some concerns with regards to setback and privacy. As noted, the proposed setbacks of the development reflect existing buildings on the site, both the detached garage and the existing structure. There are no additions or no new buildings that are proposed at all. No new buildings being brought closer to any of the surrounding residential uses. There are a few existing hedgerows around the perimeter of the site. In addition, throughout this process, it's been brought to our attention that there is a bylaw requirement for planting strips along the perimeter of the site. So we had to provide for or ensure there was sufficient width of those areas to accommodate planting. The bylaw requires that they be 1 meter planted at the time of installation and have the ability to grow up to 2 meters. So that provides for additional privacy screening as well as noise attenuation. 4 and 5 I'm going to touch on together. There were some comments and feedback provided with regards to intensification on the site, as well as maintaining the existing neighborhood character compatibility. This is absolutely, like I said, noted at the beginning of my presentation, there's no doubt that the area is predominated by traditionally low-rise residential uses. The outside of the structure will continue to function and look that way. It will have the same character and nature as the surrounding uses. However, it will be used for residential purposes. It's the oversized parcel, like I touched on, provides lots of space on site to accommodate future uses. There's no exterior alterations or buildings, no exterior additions or alterations to the buildings, and no alterations or significant alterations proposed to the parking area. As Mr. Bites touched on, the intent of the 8 units is to provide for assurances to the surrounding residents that there is no intent to provide for further intensification on the site. And finally, I'm going to just touch briefly on the notion of cluster development versus multiple dwelling. Mr. Bice touched on the definition of cluster development that's contained in the bylaw right now. And we had originally had some discussions with the municipality and came in with the application seeking permissions to establish essentially apartment building on the site. Unfortunately, the bylaw right now, the way the definition is included is it says dwelling, an apartment unit or, apartment building or multiple dwellings are dwellings containing 4 or more units, each of which have an independent entrance from a common corridor. So the intent is to have the site function like an apartment building, but as Mr. Bice touched on, it's quite a unique setup because they're in 2 separate buildings. We had to look at different ways to apply definition in this and then establish permissions under the zoning bylaw. The intent has always been to provide for multiple dwelling units. So under the existing R4 zone, it does not permit clusters or apartment buildings. So regardless of the definition that we've landed on, we knew there was the need to come forward to change the zoning on the site. There were some comments or questions with regards to building permit drawings and making sure that we're adhering to all Ontario Building Code requirements, all fire and safety requirements. If this application is approved by council, there would be obviously requirements for TPIC to go through the formal building process, submit appropriate building permit drawings. At that point, the building department would confirm that we're at meeting on all Ontario Building Code requirements, all safety, fire prevention, etc. That concludes my presentation, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Colleagues, we're at that point where we can ask questions or make comments here. Deputy Mayor Kellum, it looks like you're first.
Yes, thank you, and through you, Mayor Kaysenberg, and thank you, Krista and Planner Bice, for your presentation. Approximately a month ago, the applicant extended an invitation to all of council to have a personal open house, and on, I believe it was Tuesday, June 11th, Councillor Nordham, myself, and Planner Bice attended. And just to start on the house itself, been around 58 plus years, and when going through the tour, I can't imagine what this would be like, but the layout in that is significantly, it just makes sense to go where this is going, right from the basement, right up to the tower. The space of the units, whether it's for a bachelor, a 1-bedroom, a 2-bedroom, we won't go to the garage yet, but I was in awe and what they have done. They've done their homework, and to sum it all up, I am in support of this application. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Deputy Mayor. Anyone else with questions or comments at this point? Councillor Blazek.
Thank you, Mayor Kaysenberg. I was not able to attend the tour, but I have been through this house on several occasions, and I felt the exact same way when this application first came to the table here, and I think that intensification, while we seem to be resistant to it in many ways, is incredibly important, and this is an opportunity to have 8 residential units in an existing dwelling or in an existing building without taking up any more agricultural land. So I am also in big favor of this application.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to offer comment or ask questions? Councillor Rothwell.
Thank you, Mayor Todd, and thank you for the presentation, Kristen, and John as well. My question through you, Mayor, is for John Bice. And again, it came forward in one of the letters. At the last meeting we talked about the discussion about the official plan and the specific policies, and I just want to hear from Mr. Bice as to whether the determination of the cluster housing sort of trumped, like in terms of a different view. Is that the issue that had us draw away from an official plan amendment being required to allow for the second dwelling unit within the existing garage? Or, like, the report didn't specifically say it, but I'm presuming that that's what it was. So maybe John could answer that, and Kristen as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor Kaysenberg. That's a great topic, a great question, Councillor Rothwell. Essentially, what we had was 2 proposals, one using one definition, one using another. They both met each definition, one being second dwelling unit, one being cluster dwelling. Essentially, we assessed the application as applied for. And the second time around, the application did not provide for any second dwelling units. And since it met the definition of cluster housing, we did not consider second dwelling units because both could be considered as a cluster.
Okay, thank you for that. I just, as I say, my recollection in terms of, of the previous meeting as well as the report, I just wish it was a bit more clear that this was considered to be sort of a new or revised application on that basis. I thought that we were going to be looking at a deferral to deal with the official plan amendment, but that I'm fine with that issue. My last question specifically deals with the garage itself, and Kristen mentioned specifically the intent to comply with all the building code provisions. I'm going to assume that garage was not built on residential development standards, and significant reconstruction is going to happen to that garage. So just to be clear, if the applicant's agent, Kristen, could speak to that, because it is an issue which is in the letters of concern. But if the appearance is supposed to more or less remain what we see, that's fine. It's just the interior workings of that building are going to have to meet today's standards under the building code for residential, as opposed to a structure that was built for, which is a garage. So.
Through you, Mayor Kiesenberg, to Councillor Rothwell. Yes, so the garage itself right now, we did have some back and forth discussions as to whether or not we were going to pursue 8 units or 7 units, because it is uncertain as to what renovations are going to be required in that garage and whether or not it has the ability to accommodate 2 units. We decided to go pursue the 8 so we can provide for maximization if that garage will accommodate 2 units. There will have to be extensive design work, and again, all the building permitting process will have to be followed in order to ensure that building can accommodate residential uses.
So just to be clear, so the concerns expressed by the neighbors in terms of any change or design, and I know that you can't give promises here, but I think an assurance, at least, that it's the owner's intent that building that's there, and certainly the existing single detached dwelling, originally constructed, converted dwelling now, but is to more or less remain the way they are now. The intent is not to demolish and replace the existing garage, for example, with some new purpose-designed building for two units. Is that fair? I don't want to put words in your mouth, but if you could at least address council and the neighbors' concern, I appreciate that.
Through you, Mayor Kiesenberg, yes, the intent is to provide for accommodate the residential dwelling units in the existing structure. Now, if there is some catastrophic reason that structure cannot be used, if it's not structurally sound, if there's mold, if there's deterioration, then at that point we'll have to have a discussion. The zoning bylaw provisions have been catered, a lot of them in and around that structure. So in terms of the rear yard setbacks, the side yard setbacks. So in the event, unforeseen circumstances that the building needed to be removed and replaced, we are bound to the regulations that we are incorporating into the bylaw in terms of setbacks, encroachments, et cetera, on any of the surrounding properties. But the intent is that structure, that foundation, that building will be used as is and converted to residential dwellings.
Thank you very much, Kristen. Thank you.
All right, anyone else with questions or comments? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Notice of the decision of council will be given in accordance with the provisions of the Planning Act. Council's decision is subject to appeal to the Ontario Land Tribunal in accordance with provisions of the Planning Act. And with that, we'll declare this meeting adjourned. All right, let's turn now to our drain. Let me find the right page here in my notes. I know I have it. All right, we are going to convene a public meeting for the purposes of receiving a drainage report. If there are assessed landowners with us this evening, welcome to you. We're glad you're here to participate in this. At this hour, we will hear first from Brandon Widener from Spreet Associates, who is the engineer commissioned with preparing the report, and he will present the report regarding the Bartman Municipal Drain. Ms. Klein, do you want to bring in Mr. Widener? All right, Mr. Widener, welcome to our meeting. The floor is yours. We think he's with us.
You guys hear me now?
We can hear you. Very good. Carry on.
So, good evening, everybody. Tonight we have a little different report. Most of the drain reports we do are Section 78s or Section 4s. This one is a little different in that it's a Section 78.5. Last year there were some changes made or amendments made to the Drainage Act to allow this type of project. A Section 78.5 is referred to as a minor improvement project, where the work essentially is on one person's property. They essentially are paying 100% of the cost. They still receive grant via the province. It still becomes part of the drainage works, but the work itself doesn't really affect the drain itself in that it doesn't affect others. The process is expedited. As you'll see in this report, this is called the Bartman Drain Start Culvert. The Bartman Drain, as you know, is just south of Kurtzville. It drains part of it. We did some work on it a couple of years ago on the upstream end. That was actually completed last summer. But what we have here tonight is a request from one landowner, the Starks, for a new culvert on their property. They would like the culvert, which is adjacent to the road, line 87. They just essentially want it replaced in a little bit longer. They are paying 100% of the cost. There is no assessment schedule. There is also no quarter revision for this type of project. So the scope of work here is very simple. It's a new 20-meter length with 6-foot CSP. It's replacing the existing laneway culvert that's adjacent to the road. The total cost of the whole project is approximately $40,000. It's all assessed to the one landowner, Starkdale Acres. No one else is affected. It's all assessed to them. So it's a simple report. It's a new thing under the Drainage Act to expedite the works because, again, there is no quarter revision. So essentially, this is the owner's shot here tonight to request any changes if they want any. But essentially, this is what they asked for, and we have been in communication with them. I'm happy to answer any questions if there is any.
All right, thank you, Mr. Wagner, for joining us. Let's turn to the audience. Is the landowner in attendance with us and wishes to ask any questions or have any comments? All right, so he's indicating in the audience that he has no questions at this point. Colleagues, any questions or comments from you about this matter? I'm not seeing any indication of that. That makes this pretty straightforward. It indicates that no one has withdrawn, no significant concerns have been raised, which means at this hour then the meeting can be adjourned, and I will do so. All right. Thank you, Mr. Widener. Thank you for joining us tonight. So let's have a resolution to this effect then regarding wrapping up our public meetings this evening as follows. The public meetings under the Drainage Act and the Planning Act are now adjourned at 8:13 p.m. The council reconvenes into regular open council. Can I call for a mover on this? Councillor Richardson and Councillor Johnston, thank you. Any discussion or debate on this one? Seeing none, let's see if he scribes a week for all of us. Let's have the vote. Okay, it looks like Councillor Duncan is the one who's the victim tonight of being described who votes in favor with that. That is carried. Thank you. That means that we are bringing council back into regular session. We do have some business, I believe, to conduct with regards to the matters that have been presented to us. Let's go first with the drain matter. I have a few resolutions here, it looks like, as follows. The Council of the Municipality of North Perth accepts the Bartman Municipal Drain Report dated July 6, prepared by Street Associates, Engineers, and Architects. Can I call for mover Councillor Johnston? Councillor Durham looked like he vaguely waved his hand, so we'll call that. Second. Any discussion or debate? Seeing none, let's have that vote. And now Councillor Blazek is affected by the gremlin in the system. She's voting in favor, and with that, that's carried. Let's look next. Bylaw to provide for the drainage works as follows. Bylaw number 79-2023, being a bylaw to provide drainage works, Bartman Municipal Drain be introduced, read and considered read it for second and third time, and be first and second time. Oh, always trying to take me. And be provisionally adopted, and that the said bylaw be signed by the mayor and the clerk and sealed with the seal of the corporation. Let's call for mover by Councillor Richardson. Thank you. Councillor Rothwell will be our seconder. Discussion or debate on this one. Seeing none, let's have that vote. And that is carried. But this distinct feeling I should be aware of April Fool's Day, actually. The clerk gives me the eye. All right, let it be noted. And one more resolution on. No, we're moving to the next item. All right, next item, planning item. That North Perth Council holds a public meeting for zoning bylaw amendment 08-2023 submitted by K-Smart Associates Limited on behalf of Laverne and Marie Gingrich for lands described as Con 2 and Part Lot 1 and Part Lot 2, 5023, Line 87, Wallace Ward, Municipality of North Perth. Can I call for mover on this one? Councillor Anstep, thank you. Seconder, Councillor Blazek. Any discussion or debate on that one? Seeing none, let's have that vote. And that is carried. Thank you. Next up is the zoning bylaw here as follows. The Council of the Municipality of North Perth receives a report entitled Zoning Bylaw Amendment ZBA 21-22 affecting lands described as South Park Lot 7 and 8 Plan 152. NS Main Street, Lister Ward, Municipality of North Perth, 555 Main Street West, and that the Council of the Municipality of North Perth approves the application for zoning bylaw amendment ZBA 21-22 as modified by staff. Moved by Deputy McCallum, seconded by Councillor Wardham. Thank you. Any discussion or debate on this one? I will say that I continue to have my concerns about the issues of affordability. I've raised that issue at the last meeting. I agree generally with my colleagues that this represents novel and appropriate intensification. Thank you for your insights into this, Dr. McCallum and Councillor Blazek, but still express concern. We will not get 20% overall from an affordability perspective unless we start insisting on it in every application. And perhaps that does mean some kind of legislative process, but I'm still of my mind that we need to do something about that. Okay, I think if there are no further comments, let's have that vote. And that is carried. And then I have, is this a duplicate? No. Okay, so I have another resolution here. One more. All right, the bylaw number 83-2023 being a bylaw to amend bylaw number 6-ZB-1999 as amended, be introduced, read, and considered read a second and third time and be finally passed. And that the said bylaw be signed by the mayor and the clerk and sealed with the seal of the corporation. Moved by Councillor Duncan, thank you. Seconded by Councillor Anstep. Discussion, debate. Seeing none, let's have that vote. And that is carried. Thank you. All right. I think we got through all the pieces there, right? Thank you. Okay, let's move on to item 5 on our agenda. Reports from departments and key staff. This evening we have no reports filed in item 5.1 from the CIO's department. We do have one item coming from the strategic initiatives department this evening. For item 5.2.1, North Perth Manager of Strategic Initiatives Jessica McLean brings to the council table a report about efforts being made at the direction of council towards preparing an application for the Housing Accelerator Fund of the Government of Canada and CMHC. Further, the report points out that our community must compete against all other communities with populations over 10,000 for Housing Accelerator Fund funding. And this may warrant some advocacy from this council to the federal government to let them know that the population tiers for competitive funding don't seem all that reasonable. Ms. McLean, I stole some of your thunder, but please proceed.
Thank you, Mayor Kirstenberg, and good evening, Council. At the Housing Forum Special Council meeting that was held on May 16th, staff shared preliminary details on the recently announced Federal Government Housing Accelerator Fund. Since this time, more details have been released on the program. Staff have investigated the potential for a municipal submission, and the application window has now opened. As outlined in the report, to be eligible for half incentive funding, applicants must do a series of things, and this includes developing a housing action plan as part of their application, committing to a housing supply growth rate targets, completing or updating a housing needs assessment report, and adhering to periodic progress reporting requirements of the program. With a population over 10,000, an application from North Perth would fall under the large urban stream of the program. This means that an application would be scored in the same pool as those from much larger urban centres across Canada. So first, I'm going to touch on the Housing Action Plan requirement. This action plan must include at least 7 initiatives that will help achieve the municipality's housing supply growth target and/or remove barriers to housing supply, accelerate growth of supply, and support the development of complete, low-carbon, climate-resilient communities that are affordable, inclusive, and diverse. Initiatives should focus on transformational and long-term policy and process change rather than site-specific projects. Applicants are encouraged to align their initiatives with the initiative types that are outlined in the HAF program materials. Staff have collaborated to develop a draft North Perth Housing Action Plan, featuring the list of initiatives listed in the report and further described in the report's attachment. This draft is being provided to Council tonight for information purposes. Staff are continuing to further develop this draft to align with the requirements of the HAF application, with a final version being presented at the August 14th Council meeting. For the housing needs assessment requirement, the Perth County CAO's group has initiated conversations with Watsons and Associates for the development of a county-wide housing needs assessment. This would include the calculations of the growth rates that are required for the lower tier municipal HAF application submissions. Approval to move forward with the Perth County needs assessment by Watsons and Associates will be sought from Perth County Council at the August 3rd County Council meeting. If direction is not received from County Council to move forward with the needs assessment, municipal staff will bring a report to North Perth Council at the August 14th Council meeting, proposing the completion of a North Perth specific housing needs assessment, and this will include associated costs for Council's consideration. Lastly, I'd just like to touch on the permitted use of funds of the HAF program. So as outlined in the Council report, an application to HAF has the potential to achieve significant funds to support residential housing developments and other infrastructure that supports housing. In addition to using funds to support the costs associated with the action plan initiatives, the list of permitted use of funds to accelerate the housing supply is quite broad. I can now answer any questions that Council may have.
All right. Thank you, Ms. McLean. Colleagues, questions or first comments about this report? You understand there's sort of 2 components to this. One is advocacy, one is action. Councillor Rothwell, let me get your microphone.
Thanks, and thanks for your report, Jessica. It's It's an important piece of work. We look forward to the next, the August 14th meeting where we'll see specific details, but they are important that hopefully our three members of County Council here can express the support from North Perth Council if we all agree that we need to undertake the work on behalf of all municipalities so that we can get our fair share of these federal funds. We've talked about housing being an important issue time and time again, but in the end, if we don't get the money to do the work that needs to be done, it doesn't show that we're doing much work. And the last point, when you look at the criteria, as you've pointed out in your report, very importantly, 10,000 population is a drop in the bucket in terms of all municipalities all across Canada. Those greater than 10,000 are huge, and as much as we need help and support in North Perth, there's even more required in our large urban centers. So unfortunately, that's where the money is going to go because the need is seen to be greater there. So whether the federal government needs to relook at the criteria to somehow address the fact that municipalities throughout Canada, not just Ontario, were reorganized. Many populations used to be below 10,000 in rural municipalities, and now we're at over 15,000 population in North Perth alone. So I underscore the comments that you've made in the report, and hopefully we will see action. It's just, it's tough for David to be in with the Goliaths, is what I'll say.
Nicely said. Exactly. We are actually in competition with Vancouver, with Toronto, with Montreal. Right? That doesn't feel right. So certainly on that piece, Councillor Andreessen.
Yes, thank you. Through you, Mayor Kiesenberg. I have to agree with Councillor Rothwell's comments. I'm wondering if it's worth, writing a letter to the federal government and stating this concern because, frankly, I want us to move forward with the initiatives and the work that, we're doing on this plan, but it feels a little bit, the fact that the competition may be too steep. So I think it would be helpful for us to let the federal government know about our concerns around this.
And it's in the resolution that's been proposed that we advocate for a change to that population definition. So I think that's there. Anyone else with first comments or questions? All right, then I do have a resolution for our consideration as follows: that the Council of the Municipality of North Perth receives the North Perth Housing Action Plan draft as information with a final action plan to be presented at the August 14th, 2023 North Perth Council meeting, and that the Council of the Municipality of North Perth sends a letter to the Government of Canada, the Canada Mortgage and Housing Corporation, and Perth Wellington MP John Nader regarding the disadvantages related to the population requirements, the Housing Accelerator Fund application streams. I call for a mover. Councillor Rothwell, thank you. Councillor Richardson will be our seconder. Questions or comments on this one? I'll say certainly that at the county I intend to advocate very strongly that we take a coherent and a county-wide approach to this needs assessment. So you can certainly count Councillor Rothwell on my vote at that table for that purpose. Anyone else? Okay, seeing none, let's have that vote. And that is carried unanimously. As always, Ms. McLean, thanks. Lots of work going on there.
Thank you, Council.
Yeah. All right, we have no reports emerging tonight from the Manager of Corporate Services in that department. That means we can turn to item 5.4 on our agenda, reports from the Manager of Programs. There too, we do not have reports, but we know how busy they are with summer programming. We do have one item to consider from the Facilities Department this evening. As item 5.5.1, our Manager of Facilities brings to the table a report that calls for the award of a contract in response to a competitive bidding invitation for architectural and detailed feature drawings and plans for the Listowel Memorial Park 59 design. in Listowel Memorial Park. I'm going to call on our Manager of Facilities, Mr. Jeff Newell, for an overview of the matter. Mr. Newell, you are locked and loaded and ready to go.
Good evening, Mayor Kaysenberg and members of council. Yes, the report for this evening is regards to a request for proposal that we had issued for professional consultants for the park development and design, detailed drawings and contract administration for the MAP 59 Listowel Memorial Arena Park project. We received 6 different bids on for the RFP. There was a range of prices of those of the submissions. The lowest being $55,204 and the highest being $208,515. So there was a very large range. We did an evaluation and with 3 independent evaluators on the municipal staff team, and it was unanimously determined that Shift Landscape Architecture should be awarded the the contract based on their proposal and their pricing. We had initially budgeted $100,000 as part of the budget for this exact kind of work, so we're fairly close. It's felt that the 5% budget increase on this one work can be assumed or absorbed by other aspects of the project as we move forward. So with that being said, we would like that the Council of the Municipality of North Perth awards a request for proposal to the Listowel Memorial Park Development Consulting Services to Shift Landscape Architecture for a total of $105,790. And I'd be happy to answer any questions that people may have.
Okay, thanks, Mr. Newell. Questions or comments to begin here from Council? Councillor Rothwell.
Thanks very much, Mayor Todd. I just want to confirm, Jeff, Shift is the firm that had been doing the preliminary, they were awarded the preliminary work and the basis upon the concept design that went through the committee and council seen previously, right? That's the same company?
That's right. So Shift Landscaping was the ones that did the initial concept drawings that were approved through council, and the public information sessions and everything. They had coordinated that. So they are very knowledgeable and had a great submission based on the experience they've already had with the project.
Yeah, so I certainly agree. They certainly impressed me. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else with comments or questions? All right, I have a resolution for consideration that the Council of the Municipality of North Perth awards request for proposal NP-028-23P Listowel Memorial Park 59 Development Consulting Services to Shift Landscape Architecture for a total of $105,790 excluding HST. Moved by Councillor Richardson, seconded by Councillor Andreessen. Any discussion or debate? Seeing none, let's have that vote. And that is carried. And I think there's reasonable excitement about that project around the table as well.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Mr. Newell. All right. I think what we'll do is we'll hear from Mr. Hackett next, and then we'll take a 5-minute break. So Mr. Hackett, for item 5.6.1, our Manager of Environmental Services working with the procurement officer has brought forward a report recommending award of contract for a new clarifier and septage receiving station upgrades to BGL contractors of Waterloo, Ontario. This is a big and important project, so I'm going to ask Mr. Hackett to give us a little bit of explanation of what's involved here and why this is important. Mr. Hackett, please.
Thanks, Mayor Kaysenberg and Council. Yes, this is a fairly big project going on. The clarifier work is to replace the 2 existing clarifiers with all new equipment and also adding a scum removal component to it that takes the things that accumulate on top off instead of getting into the effluent. So we're excited about some of these things. I thought it will help with our treatment that we are able to provide. The septic receiving station is mainly doing a treatment on the concrete tank itself and also adding a sort of a jet pump type of thing to help with the mixing of the contents of the tank as well, and also the odor control system is getting overhauled. So So that's the main part of the work. We did have 6 bids come in, which we're happy to see. It was quite competitive with the first 2 bids, the 2 lowest bids being within $100,000 of each other. We had a project budget of $4,310,000. That was for the construction costs that you see. It also includes the engineering and contract administration costs, and it also included the replacement of the auger for the in the SRS, and that's work to be completed by municipal staff. That wasn't actually part of this contract, but we included in the entire price for this work. So the low tender came in, as I said, $3,132,349. We have a letter of recommendation that was provided by GM Blue Plan, our engineers on the project. They've reviewed all the submissions, and they're recommending acceptance of the lowest bid, which was, as you mentioned, BGL Contractors Group out of Waterloo. So I could take any questions if there are any.
Great, thank you, Mr. Hackett. It's not every day that we see a bid come in that's quite a bit lower than what we had projected, so that's rather exciting. Questions or first comments? Okay, I have a resolution as follows, that the Council of the Municipality of North Perth awards tender NP-022-23T North Perth Wastewater Treatment Plant Clarifier and Septage Receiving Station Upgrades as per the recommendation from GM Blue Plan Engineering Limited to BGL Contractors Corp, Waterloo, Ontario, in the amount of $3,132,349, excluding HST. Can I call for a mover? Councillor Richardson, Deputy Mayor Callum will be our seconder. Discussion or debate? Like I said, I think it's exciting when we see a deal here. Let's grab it quickly, is my opinion. Seeing no debate or discussion, let's have a vote. And that is carried. Thank you, Mr. Hackett. Good luck with all the work that lies ahead in that one for you. And colleagues, let's take a 5-minute bio break. We'll return at, let's say, we'll call it 8 minutes. We'll return at 8:45.
Thank you, Mayor Kasenberg, members of council. That's an excellent summary. There was a recent accident in the spring at that intersection, and it brought about more study. There have been historic accidents at that location in the past for the last 3 years as we studied through it. And I've put a summary. I'll just read the bullets. As we go through the looking at a four-way stop and stop controls at an intersection, total vehicle volumes, total combined vehicle and pedestrian volumes, as well as the split between the major and the minor street are important, as well as collision data, as well as sight lines. So to summarize, it's a process that's put through the MTO, and meeting warrants needs to happen specifically when these warrants are met, and the intersection would function more normally with that happening. So what we found is there is significant traffic on the major street. The major street is the street that's controlled and traffic is stopped on. So that's the opposite of what you would expect as a driver. And we see this happening at many streets in Listowel and some in Atwood and some in some of our other urban areas. And we're looking to rectify that. So this is an example of the process of rectifying the major minor problem. But what the warrants did show is that there was enough traffic and pedestrian volume, that the split was adequate, and that it warrants the four-way stop. And in doing so, it should be a safer intersection with that happening. We also found in one of the recommendations is that one of the trees does obscure a vision and that the tree needs to be removed. So those are the recommendations that are in front of you. There's a minor cost to this installation, simply 2 more stop signs and locates and some staff time. And I think it'll function better in the future. Looking ahead, the master plan does speak to these issues and say that we need to make sure that always stop requests go through a process of probably going through the Public Works Department, getting reviewed and assessed by the traffic engineer, and then they either meet the warrants or do not meet the warrants. So it's important to remember that's the process they're going to go through. This is an excellent first example of that working, where a stop warrant was issued, and we'll be putting it in place with a recommendation of council to move forward.
Thank you, Mayor Kasenberg. Through you, I'll just be brief. Thanks, Lyndon, for the report, and I'm fully in support of this. One question I did have, though, is just regarding the tree. Can you just confirm which tree that is? Because there's a couple along that street.
Yeah, I think it's the maple. It is in the on the Argyle corner. It's going to be northwest corner of the intersection. It's kind of a split maple. It's tight to the intersection. So it would be kitty corner to the convenience store mall area across the street, northwest corner. If we had I guess I don't have a drawing. If you're coming from Wallace North and you head westbound,
yep,
and you stop the stop sign and you look out your right window, it'll be across the street on that northwest corner. Yep.
Okay.
Lindsay's got it there. The streets are skewed, but yeah. We'll keep spinning. Oh, go back. That's a tree.
That's it. Yeah. Okay. Yep. Thank you.
Wow.
She did stop at stop signs.
Yes, through you, Mayor Kasenberg, and thank you for the report. Yes, as we know, that is a very busy street going north and south, and with congestion, usually on Thursdays and Fridays, people use that as a bypass and going down, and I'm sure that will eliminate the speed coming to a stop. Is if you're heading east or west on Elizabeth, if someone's coming down there edging out, it's a make or break. So I'm in support of it as well. Thank you.
Number 47, PW-PW-2000 traffic bylaw, Schedule C always stops to include the intersection of Elizabeth Street West and Argyle Avenue North. Thank you. bylaw to amend bylaw number 47-2W-22. That's the right number? 2000. 2000? Yes. 2000, sorry, because we have another problem there. The traffic bylaw be introduced by first and second and third time, and be finally passed, said bylaw be signed by the mayor and clerk, and sealed with the seal of the corporation. I got to be very now, second and steps. Any discussion or debate on this one? See none, let's have that vote. This project, as soon as we will not only put a stop sign in there, but there'll be some kind of like new flash.
That's correct. Yeah.
Let's turn to 5.7.2. This one addresses the ongoing work being planned and completed for the so-called Northeast Master Plan. Tonight we have before us a bylaw that enables cost recovery for the in that area that are being expected by this. And as I understand, this is a pretty customary action. Services are extended. So Mr. Couch, just a brief explanation if you would.
Thank you, Mayor Kaysenberg. Yes, our other developments where there are existing properties and their capital costs for the creation and construction of sanitary and water, those costs are charged out at an allocated rate. There's been a team of individuals that have been involved in this. Really, the finance department has worked on the math behind it. The engineering and planning consultants have actually assisted with the numbers in terms of the overall cost of the sanitary and water installations throughout the whole Northeast plan. So we've got contracted amounts for the work that we're doing right now, and we have estimated amounts for the other. As in the report, it says $34.6 million for the overall project. About 12 million of that is the water and sanitary component throughout the entire area. That goes all the way from Fairlane Road to where we're working right now on David Street. It's significant money, and the recovery is fairly allocated in a flat rate system for both the commercial and the residential dwellings that are currently in place. So at the end of it, the recommendation is to accept the bylaw and pass the bylaw that would see us recover those costs from those existing residential and commercial establishments. And just the last paragraph talks about non-developed lots. Just wanted to point out that the development charge bylaw covers those non-developed lots. You have a map at the back end. The map is colored. The map showing the large block areas and the yellow areas. Those are the developing areas in the future that will be charged through the DC bylaw. And overall, we'll have full recovery of those costs for sanitary and water through this.
Okay, thank you. Questions or first comments from council? Councillor Andreessen first.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor Kaysenberg. I just wondered, Mr. Couch, could you give us a bit of an update? They are doing a lot of earth moving and, a lot of kind of so-called construction back there. Is that for the sanitation purposes now? Are they working on that now, or is there other things happening back there?
Yes, actually, a lot of that fill was removed mainly from the stormwater pond that was developed at the back end of the property to the east edge behind Walton. But the work of putting the sanitary and water is happening on Walton Street. They've actually completed it entirely to the north of the new homes on Walton, and they're now going to continue from what is the middle of Walton to the south to Ryan Street, installing water and sanitary, and that work just commenced. It's supposed to get done probably in the next 4 to 8 weeks, and that'll be the final of the first phase. We know that there's water main expected. You should see a tender about that shortly on Fairlane Road as well, a small segment. So it's kind of all over the area, but yeah, all of that fill and all of that activity is related to those developments and road construction.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. And I had a guided tour from Mr. Couch of the neighborhood there and what was going on. So there's certainly a lot of progress happening fairly quickly in this project. Councillor Rothwell.
Thank you, Mayor Todd, and thanks, Lennon, for the report. And this question is for you and perhaps Chris Snell as well. Obviously, with the yellow outlined areas for undeveloped or yet to be developed, a fair bit of that is owned by the municipality of North Perth, and if not now, but perhaps later, we could have an update in terms of our timing when we can look at a application to develop those lands and how soon we're ready to go forward, because frankly, until such time as they're developed, we're still money spent without money coming in, so.
Do you want to go?
So based on the meeting actually of last Friday where we've completed most of the reporting requirements that the county will need to see in an application, the only thing we're waiting on is traffic consultant to update the traffic study. We just actually had a meeting with MTO 2.5 weeks ago to clarify some of the expectations they had regarding Fairlane Road and 987 and its relationship with Highway 23. So I suspect we'll be able to submit an application in full and hopefully by the end of August, the latest.
Thanks very much, Chris and Linda. Thanks, man.
Okay, anyone else with questions or comments on this matter? Okay, I have two resolutions, it looks like, for this one. The first is that as follows, the Council of the Municipality of North Perth receives a staff report and approves bylaw 45-2023, the Northeast Master Plan Area Servicing Bylaw. Can I call for a mover? Councillor Duncan, thank you. Seconded by Councillor Nordum. Any discussion or debate? Seeing none, let's have that vote. And that is carried. And then related is formally the bylaw as follows, that bylaw number 45-2023, being a bylaw to authorize the construction and supply of water and wastewater systems and to establish a serviced area to impose connection requirements and charges to obtain revenue to pay for the capital costs thereof, be introduced, read, and considered read a first, second, and third time and be finally passed, and that the said bylaw be signed by the mayor and the clerk and sealed with the seal of the corporation. Councillor Rothwell will move. Councillor Andreessen will be our seconder on that one. Discussion or debate? Seeing none, let's have that vote. And that is carried. Thank you. And now to item 5.7.3, our manager of operations has brought forward a report recommending award of contract for milling and asphalt resurfacing work on parts of Barber Avenue North in Listowel to Armstrong Paving Group of St. Mary's, Ontario. Mr. Couch, some brief comments maybe?
Thank you. Shave and pave operations happen when the sewers and the water mains are in good condition below the ground and you just need to do a surface coat of asphalt. So Barber is a good candidate for that. This report, because the tender amounts came in so competitive and so well below the $225,000 budget, we're looking to add the block by the school, which has the parking area beside it, to the contract. Estimated $49,000 additional cost for that and still well under budget. So that's the project. They can start work actually with this award as early as tomorrow. So we're looking for an approval of that tonight.
All right, apparently my signature is going to be needed urgently on this one from what I'm hearing. All right, questions, first comments? Okay, I have a resolution as follows. The Council of the Municipality of North Perth awards tender NP-0370-23T hot mix pavement, Barber Avenue North, to the low bidder, Armstrong Paving and Materials Group Limited, St. Mary's, Ontario, in the amount of $120,478.06, not including HST. Can I call for a mover? Councillor Richardson, Councillor Johnston will be our seconder. Any discussion or debate? We like lower prices. All right, let's have that vote. And that is carried. Thank you very much, Mr. Couch. You brought some good news tonight, Mr. Couch. Thank you. Let's turn to item 5.8, reports from the Development and Protective Services Department. I'm not sure if someone has adjusted the temperature in here or whether it's just me, but it feels a little on the warm side. So let's turn to item 5.8 and hope that it doesn't get warm too. For item 5.8.1, Council is invited to exempt from part lot control lands designated as residential in Listle Ward on Hutton Street West. The usual purpose of such an auction is to allow adjustment of lot lines between residential parcels. And we see that Mr. Bice from the county is here with us again to present a brief overview of this action. Welcome, Planner Bice.
Thank you, Mayor Kaysenberg and Council. So this application for part lot control was actually an application that was previously approved. It has since been exempt, or sorry, it has since lapsed, and then that is the reason why we're seeing it again. So the location is on Hutton Street, there where the red star is. It's just to the east of the river. Okay, so the applicant is Euro Custom Homes, or Henry Fry, and he is requesting that exemption from part lot control be granted for the registered plan 44M-72 for specifically parts 1 to 10. Lot 71 listable for 5 of the units within the 8-unit townhouse. If approved, exemption from part lot control will allow the owner of the lots to register a reference plan so that each of the 5 townhouse units will be separate and conveyable lots. Exemption from part lot control was provided in 2022 by North Perth Bylaw 67-2022 for the subject lands, and the reference plan to separate the 8 townhouse units was deposited. However, only 3 of the units were successfully registered, and the remaining were merged. As you can see on the slide, the red box indicates those parts 1 to 10, which are subject to this application. So the subject property is designated residential in the Listowel Ward Official Plan and zoned R5 Special, R5-14 in the North Perth Zoning Bylaw. There have been 2 minor variances for this townhouse. Application for minor variance A19-2020 reduced the required exterior side yard setback from 6 to 4.5 meters and reduced the interior side yard setback as well. Minor variance A01-2022 reduced the minimum corner lot frontage from 13 to 11.2 meters. The development does conform with the requirements of the R5-14 zone. So the County of Perth is the delegated approval authority under the Planning Act for bylaws to remove part lot control. So the removal of part lot control to establish the lot lines between units of the townhouses is an accepted method in the Planning Act, and the Planning Department recommends that North Perth Council approve the part lot control application and forward it to the County of Perth. I can take any questions.
All right, thanks, Mr. Bice. Questions or first comments from Council? Okay, I have 2 resolutions here then on this matter. The first as follows: North Perth Council approves the application by Euro Custom Homes Inc. for the exemption of part lot control on lands described as parts 1 to 10, lot 71 of Plan 44M-72. Listowel Ward, Municipality of North Perth, and forward it to the County of Perth for approval. Can I call for a mover? Councillor Duncan, thank you. Councillor Blazek will be our seconder. Discussion or debate on that one? Seeing none, let's have that vote. And that is carried. And now the bylaw to enable same, that bylaw number 77-2023 being a bylaw to exempt from part lot control parts 1 to 10, block 71, plan 44M72, Hutton Avenue, West Listowel Ward, be introduced, read, and considered read a first, second, and third time, and be finally passed, and said bylaw be signed by the mayor and the clerk, and sealed with the seal of the corporation. I call for mover on this one. Councillor Anstead, thank you, and Councillor Nordholm will be our seconder. Discussion or debate on that one? Seeing none, let's have that vote.
I'm in favor. These crime issues.
Okay, Councillor Ansted's registering a manual vote in favor, and with that, we have that resolution carried as well. All right, Mr. Bice, stay in place. We have more from you on a different matter. You've brought forward an amendment to the North Perth zoning bylaw to support a zoning change on lands on Elma Street West in Listowel for the expansion of an existing insurance brokerage business. Please take it away.
Thank you again, Mayor Kasenberg and Council. So Council is likely familiar with this application. It has gone through a listable ward official plan amendment that was approved, and the public meeting was held on June 19th for this application for zoning bylaw amendment as well. So the proposal is located at 622 Elma Street at the Red Star. It's at the corner of Havelock Avenue South and Elma Street West. And the applicants are SSBA, Sarah and Shane Van Allen. The applicant is Carolyn Baker. So the building on the site was initially a church, just for recollection purposes. It was repurposed to be an insurance office, as you can see on the slide. The owners of the property would now like to enlarge the office space. The owners are requesting the specifics outlined in the slide. So essentially, it's to limit the permitted uses to business and professional office only. And it's also to have a minimum front yard and exterior side yard setback of 7.5 meters, whereas 10.5 is required. And it's also to limit the business and professional office to have a maximum gross floor area of 500 meters squared. And an additional provision would be to exempt it from having a loading space. Most of these requirements were addressed at the listable ward official plan stage. Some of those setbacks and loading space items are specific to the zoning bylaw. So listable OPA number 37 was that listable official plan amendment that was approved on July 6th. Considering a commercial zone for the site is essentially the main concept of the zoning bylaw amendment. It's essentially to look at the compatibility of the surrounding neighborhood and what happens when you propose a highway commercial zone next to some low density residential is typically there are some compatibility concerns. However, those concerns were addressed by limiting the uses on the site through the zoning bylaw amendment and the official plan amendment to business and professional office only, and to cap the square footage or the gross floor area that is. Additionally, the loading space is not required for a business and a professional office, hence the removal in the zoning bylaw. And we've discussed the setbacks with operations staff who have indicated there would be no concerns with those reduced setbacks to the front and exterior side yard. So that being said, the planning department is recommending approval of the application. One comment was submitted with the public meeting, and no further comments were submitted or addressed at that public meeting stage. Alan Hamilton was the individual who has indicated that he has no objections to the proposal. I can take any questions.
All right, thank you, Mr. Bice. Questions or first comments on this matter? Anyone? Okay, so I have two resolutions then. The first as follows, that the Council of the Municipality of North Perth receives a report entitled Zoning Bylaw Amendment ZBA-05-23 submitted by Carolyn Baker on behalf of SSVA Inc. affecting lands described as Part Lot 17 and Lot 25, Plan 185, list to award Municipality of North Perth, and that Council approves zoning bylaw amendment number ZBA-05-23 affecting lands described as Part Lot 17 and Lot 25, Plan 185, list to award Municipality of North Perth. Can I call for a mover? Councillor Richardson, Councillor Norton will be our seconder. Thank you. Any discussion or debate on this one? Seeing none, let's have that vote.
I'm in favor.
Councillor Anstedt registers a manual vote. And that is carried. Thank you. And now the enabling bylaw here as follows. The bylaw number 82-2023 being a bylaw to amend bylaw number 6-ZB-1999 as amended, be introduced, read, and considered ready for second and third time, and be finally passed. And said bylaw be signed by the mayor and the clerk and sealed with the seal of the corporation. Can I call for a mover on this one? Thank you, Deputy Mayor Callum. Councillor Rothman will be our seconder on that one. Discussion or debate? Seeing none, let's have that vote. Councillor Anstett votes affirmatively. And that is carried. Thank you. Mr. Vice, thank you for all your work tonight. We appreciate having you with us. That allows us to turn to item 6 on our agenda. For item 6.1, are there any reports, councillors, that you would like to ask of staff or of our committees? Councillor Johnston.
Thank you, Mayor Kasenberg. Report will end up with Lyndon through Chris or however it goes, but we have a lot of dead trees in our road allowance, and I know that we do cut a bunch down, but I'm not sure we're gaining on cutting them down faster than they're dying, and some are ash, some are maple. And I'm also not sure hoping that they fall down in the farmer's fields is also a good plan. So I didn't know, Lyndon, if we have a plan to stay ahead of them or to keep up. I just, when I'm out and about, you're noticing lots and lots of dead trees. So I didn't know if we don't have a plan, maybe we should be looking at how we can keep up with dead trees.
Mr. Couch is with us still, so let's ask him.
We did increase the budget with the ash problem that we have. 2 years ago, we started mapping where they all were, and it was worse in the south than the north. We did significantly more removals 2 years ago. We did more last year. This year we haven't started yet, but there is a program. We're aware of it. We probably need more resources. We were actually just last week talking about a brush chipper to help our operations just keep up with that, as well as a contract operation. So we're aware of that, and we'll probably come back through the budget process about what we're going to do over the next 4 to 5 years. But yes, thanks.
Perfect. That's awesome. Good.
All right, so it doesn't sound like we need a written report brought forward to per that. Any other requests for reports from staff or committee at this point? All right, let's move on then to item 7. We haven't received any additional items of correspondence beyond that which was implicated in the consent agenda. Let's turn to some bylaws. We have a few before us tonight. As item 8.1, council is asked to amend its so-called appointments bylaw to add and remove members from the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Advisory Committee. The resolution is as follows: that bylaw number 65-2023, being a bylaw to amend the North Perth Boards and Committees appointment bylaw, be introduced, read, and considered read a first, second, and third time, and be finally passed, and said bylaw be signed by the mayor and the clerk and sealed with the seal of the corporation. Can I call for a move on that one? Councillor Andreessen, seconded by Councillor Blazek. Thank you. Discussion or debate on this one? Seeing none, let's have that vote. And that is carried. Thank you. For 8.2, we have a bylaw to approve authorizing signing by the mayor and clerk of an agreement with His Majesty the King in Right of Ontario as represented by the Ministry of Agriculture, Food and Rural Affairs. The resolution reads as follows: that bylaw number 78-2023, being a bylaw to authorize the signing of an agreement with His Majesty the King in Right of Ontario as represented by the Minister of Agriculture, Food and Rural Affairs, be introduced, read, and considered read a first, second, and third time, and be finally passed, and the said bylaw be signed by the mayor and the clerk and sealed with the seal of the corporation. Can I call for mover? Councillor Rothwell, thank you. Councillor Andreessen will be our seconder. Discussion or debate on this one? Seeing none, let's have that vote. And that's carried. Thank you. And for 8.3, council is asked to approve a bylaw that applies the approved BIA levy to businesses captured by the listable BIA geography. The resolution is as follows: at bylaw number 80-2023, being a bylaw to levy business improvement area charges for the 2023 taxation year, be introduced, read, and considered read a first, second, and third time, and be finally passed, and the said bylaw be signed by the mayor and the clerk and sealed with the seal of the corporation. Can I call for a mover? Deputy Mayor Kellam, this sounds like you. And seconded by Councillor Richardson. Thank you. Any discussion or debate on this one? Seeing none, let's have that vote. And that is carried. Thank you. That brings us to agenda item number 9. Are there any councillors wishing leave to give notice of motion this evening? Seeing none, we'll move to item 10 on our agenda. For item 10.1, are there any announcements that would be of benefit to our community or that reflect well on North Perth at this time? And I don't know if we have any who are still connected by a web conference, but if we did, we'd pay attention, right? But we don't. So let's go to Councillor Johnston.
Thank you, Mayor Kasenberg. So a good news Perth County North Perth story. Last Wednesday, I had the honor of accompanying 5 4-H members to the first provincial dairy judging competition that's been held since 2019. There was a new competition at this year for the highest scores per county, and for the first time inaugural award, Perth County was the winner of that, of which 2 of the 5 members are from North Perth. And then for the whole day, out of 70 judges, North Perth member, a nephew of Alan Rothwell's, Seth Johnston, won a number of awards throughout the day. It finished as the reserve champion overall judge for the province and qualified for Team Ontario that will be judging at Madison, Wisconsin World Dairy Expo in October. So it was a very successful day for Perth County and North Perth.
Well, hearty congratulations to all who are involved. And if there's some policy that invites these folks in for recognition, then we'll make sure that that gets taken care of. But if not, nicely done. Thank you for sharing that with us. That's very exciting. I've been to Madison, Wisconsin. Not a bad place. All right. Anyone else? Item 10.1. Announcements that are useful and beneficial. All right. Let's move to item 11 then. We have 3 matters to be considered in a closed session meeting of council. I will now read the resolution that explains and enables our action to enter the closed session. As follows, the council proceeding camera at 9:18 p.m. to address a matter pertaining to the following. There's 3 matters, actually. A proposed or pending acquisition or disposition of land by the municipality or local board regarding property described as Plan 194, Lot 1, Part Lot 7 of Lots 21, 22, NS Main Street Plan 149, Part Lot 22, Listowel, Municipality of North Perth. A proposed or pending acquisition or disposition of land by the municipality or local board regarding property described as Plan 44M10, Part Block 39 RP, 44R 3986, Part PT Part 1, Nelson Avenue South, and a proposed or pending acquisition or disposition of land by the municipality or local board regarding property described as Patrick Street, Plan 280, North Perth. It always feels like I'm reading the phone book. Can I call for a mover or seconder? Yes, Councillor Rothwell will move, and Councillor Richardson will be our seconder on this one. Any discussion or debate around going into closed session? Seeing none, let's have that vote. And we're missing 1.
I'm in favor.
All right. Councillor Anstead, his vote's up there. There we go. All right. And so with that, we have that resolution carried, which means we will enter closed session. At this point, I'm going to invite our IT guru to come up and help us reset things for that meeting.
He's on.
Okay.
It's still, we got the splash, we don't have any options, so we can't work with the splash.
Okay, it's done. Is it gone now? Okay, here's the audio. Testing, testing. Is it through?
Video.
Okay, we're back on. All right, thank you. So, for item 12 on our agenda, I can confirm the council did discuss the matters identified in our enabling resolution for a closed session meeting of council and did give staff direction pertaining to the matters. At this time, we'll keep those matters confidential for the reasons stipulated in our enabling resolution for closed session. Council has mandated Good Practice Act near the end of its meeting agenda to confirm all of its actions and business of its meeting through what is called the confirmatory bylaw. For item 13.1, I have the draft as follows. Bylaw number 84-2023 being a bylaw to confirm generally previous actions of the Council of the Municipality of North Perth be introduced, read, and considered read a first, second, and third time and be finally passed. And that the said bylaw be signed by the mayor and the clerk and sealed with the seal of the corporation. Can I call for a mover? Councillor Nordham, thank you. And Councillor Anstead as our seconder. Any discussion or debate on that bylaw? Seeing none, let's have the vote. Okay, so we've lost semi-scribe connectivity, it would appear. Maybe. No, you got all kind of counted for. And so that's carried. And that means we've come to that magic moment of adjournment. We've completed everything that was put before us and probably then some. And thus it's appropriate for us to consider adjournment. I have a resolution as follows. The council meeting adjourns at 10:16 p.m. to meet again for general council business on Monday, August 14th, 2023 at 7 p.m. Can I call for a mover? Councillor Blazek, seconded by Councillor Andreessen. It's not debatable. Let's have that vote. And that is carried. All right, our next regular meeting is Monday, August 14th, 2023. Until that time, this council is adjourned.